No one thought a simple smart home installation would quietly begin a story filled with unexpected emotions. Ethan Carter had built a small but successful home technology business in Seattle, installing security cameras, smart locks, and automated lights for families who wanted modern comfort. He enjoyed the work because it kept his days simple and focused, but his personal life had slowly become routine. He had been married to Emily Carter for 6 years, and although they respected each other deeply, their relationship had lost the warmth it once had. Emily worked long hours at a large marketing company, often leaving early in the morning and returning late at night. Their conversations had become short and practical, about bills, groceries, or weekend plans, while the deeper connection they once shared quietly faded into the background. One Friday evening, Emily mentioned something that seemed small at the time. Her mother, Laura Bennett, had recently moved into a new house outside the city after deciding she wanted a calmer life away from downtown noise. Laura had always been curious about technology, but never fully understood it, and now she had purchased an entire smart home system online: door cameras, voice assistants, smart lights, motion sensors, and automated temperature controls. The boxes had arrived, but she had no idea how to install them. Emily casually asked Ethan if he could help her mother set everything up over the weekend, since it was exactly the kind of work he did every day. Ethan agreed without hesitation because he had always respected Laura. She had been kind to him since the day he married Emily, never interfering in their marriage and always welcoming him warmly during family visits. On Saturday morning, Ethan packed his tool bag, loaded several testing devices into his truck, and drove toward Laura's new neighborhood. The area was quiet and surrounded by tall trees, with wide streets and modern houses that felt peaceful compared to the busy city. When he pulled into Laura's driveway, he noticed the house was beautiful but simple. Large windows, a soft gray exterior, and a calm feeling that made the place seem almost like a retreat. Laura opened the door with a friendly smile that showed clear relief when she saw him standing there with his tools. She was in her mid-40s, confident and graceful in a natural way, dressed casually but neatly as if she had been trying to prepare for the day's project. She laughed lightly when Ethan stepped inside and saw the stack of unopened smart home boxes covering the dining table. Laura admitted she had tried reading the instruction manuals but quickly felt overwhelmed by the complicated diagrams and unfamiliar terms. Ethan assured her it was much easier than it looked and immediately began organizing the equipment. The morning passed quickly as he installed smart bulbs throughout the house, mounted cameras near the front door and backyard, connected motion sensors in the hallway, and set up a central smart hub that controlled everything. Laura followed him around the house, asking curious questions about how each device worked, occasionally laughing at herself when she forgot simple voice commands. At one point, she accidentally activated the voice assistant, which suddenly started playing loud jazz music in the living room, surprising both of them and making them laugh. The relaxed mood made the long installation feel easy, and Ethan found himself enjoying the calm environment of the house. Unlike his own home, where evenings often felt quiet and distant, Laura's place had a warm atmosphere even though she lived alone. During a short coffee break in the kitchen, Laura explained that moving into this house was her way of starting a new chapter. After years of raising Emily and managing a busy family life, she finally wanted a peaceful place where she could slow down and focus on herself. Ethan listened respectfully, noticing the thoughtful tone in her voice. By early afternoon, most of the devices were working, and Ethan began connecting everything to Laura's phone so she could control the lights, doors, and cameras from one app. He demonstrated how the living room lights could dim automatically in the evening, how the thermostat adjusted itself depending on the weather, and how the cameras recorded short clips whenever motion was detected. Laura seemed fascinated watching the system respond instantly to simple commands. She tested the lights, the door locks, and even asked the voice assistant for the weather forecast just to see how smoothly the system responded. The house slowly transformed into a modern smart home while sunlight moved across the wooden floor. At one point, Ethan checked the security camera feed on his tablet to confirm the angles were correct. The screen showed small live views of the front door, backyard, and living room, each quietly capturing moments happening inside the house. Laura leaned closer to see the screen better, and for a brief second their shoulders brushed lightly. Both of them stepped back almost immediately, not because anything inappropriate had happened, but because the moment felt unexpectedly personal. Ethan quickly focused back on the system, explaining how the cameras stored recordings that could be reviewed later if needed. Laura nodded thoughtfully while looking at the screen where tiny clips of movement were already being saved. Doors opening, lights switching on, simple everyday actions. She quietly remarked that it felt strange knowing the house could remember small pieces of daily life. Ethan replied that technology was designed to protect people, but sometimes it also captured ordinary moments that most people never noticed. By late afternoon, the installation was finally complete. With one voice command, Laura turned on soft music, dimmed the lights, and locked the doors, all while smiling with amazement at how easily everything worked. Ethan packed his tools, satisfied that the system was running perfectly. As he prepared to leave, Laura walked him to the front door and thanked him sincerely for helping her understand the technology. Ethan told her she could call any time if something stopped working or if she needed help learning new features. He didn't think much about the offer at the time because helping family felt natural. When he stepped outside and drove away, the sun was already beginning to set behind the trees, casting warm light across the quiet neighborhood. Ethan believed the day had been nothing more than a simple job, another smart home installed, another satisfied homeowner. But inside Laura's house, the cameras and sensors he had installed were already quietly recording the first moments of a story that none of them could yet see coming, because sometimes the smallest decisions, like agreeing to help someone for a single weekend, can slowly open the door to emotions and truths that change everything. A few days after Ethan Carter finished installing the smart home system in Laura Bennett's new house, life slowly returned to normal. Yet small moments began connecting their lives in ways neither of them expected. One afternoon, while Ethan was organizing equipment at his workshop in Seattle, his phone rang and he saw Laura's name on the screen. When he answered, she sounded slightly embarrassed and explained that the kitchen lights had suddenly turned purple and she had no idea how it happened. Ethan smiled and opened the smart home app on his tablet, quickly checking the settings, while calmly explaining that the system sometimes switched into mood lighting if a command was misunderstood. Within a minute, he reset the lights and they returned to normal, and Laura laughed with relief, joking that the house seemed smarter than she was. The call should have ended there, but instead, they talked for several more minutes about how she was learning to use the voice assistant and how the cameras kept sending alerts she didn't always understand. Ethan patiently explained everything step by step, and by the end of the conversation, Laura sounded more confident using the system. Over the next week, similar calls happened again, each one small and harmless. Sometimes the thermostat felt too cold, sometimes a motion sensor activated unexpectedly, and sometimes the voice assistant played music when Laura hadn't asked for it. Every time Ethan guided her through the controls with calm patience. For him, it was simple technical support, something he did for many customers, but the difference was that Laura was family, and their conversations naturally drifted beyond technology. She asked about his business, his daily schedule, and whether he enjoyed working alone installing devices in quiet houses. Ethan admitted that he liked the independence, though the work could sometimes feel lonely during long days. Meanwhile, his life at home with Emily continued in the same predictable pattern. Emily left early for work almost every morning and returned late in the evening, often tired from meetings and deadlines. Their dinners were usually quiet, filled with short conversations about schedules or errands. One evening, Ethan mentioned that Laura was still learning the smart system and had called him a few times for help. Emily nodded without much interest and said that her mother had always struggled with technology. Then she returned to answering emails on her phone. Ethan didn't feel upset by her reaction, but he did notice the difference between Emily's distracted responses and the warm curiosity Laura showed during their conversations. A week later, Laura called again, this time asking if Ethan could stop by for a quick visit because one of the door sensors kept sending notifications even when the door was closed. Ethan happened to be working nearby, so he agreed to visit after finishing another installation. When he arrived, Laura welcomed him inside with the same friendly smile he remembered from the first day. The house felt calm and organized, now that the smart system was fully installed. Soft lighting filled the living room. Quiet music played in the background, and the temperature inside felt perfectly balanced. Ethan checked the door sensor within minutes and discovered that it simply needed to be adjusted slightly. After fixing it, he tested the door several times to confirm the alert stopped appearing. Laura watched carefully, trying to learn the process in case it happened again. Once the problem was solved, they sat down in the kitchen for coffee, while the system updated a few settings in the background. The sunlight coming through the window made the room feel peaceful, and for a moment, Ethan forgot he was technically working. Laura thanked him again for helping and admitted that living alone in a new house had taken some adjustment. She explained that after years of raising Emily and managing a busy family life, the quiet evenings sometimes felt strange. Ethan listened respectfully, understanding the feeling more than he expected, because his own home often felt quiet even when Emily was there. They talked casually about everyday things, favorite movies, changes in technology, and how smart homes were becoming more common in modern neighborhoods. The conversation flowed naturally, and neither of them noticed how quickly time passed. Eventually, Ethan remembered he still needed to check the camera system before leaving. He opened the control panel on his tablet and began scrolling through the recorded clips that the cameras automatically saved whenever movement happened inside the house. The system showed small moments from Laura's daily routine: her entering the house with groceries, turning on the living room lights in the evening, or walking through the hallway late at night. Watching the clips felt strangely personal, even though they were simple recordings meant for security. Laura stood beside him and quietly observed the screen. She noticed how the system captured tiny pieces of ordinary life without understanding the meaning behind them. She commented that it felt strange knowing the house remembered moments she might forget. Ethan agreed, explaining that technology could record actions, but never emotions. As they watched the screen together, the camera feed briefly showed their reflections standing side by side in the living room earlier that day. The image looked almost like a photograph of two people sharing a quiet afternoon. Laura noticed it first and smiled lightly before stepping back a little, as if realizing the moment felt more personal than intended. Ethan quickly switched to another camera view and confirmed everything was working perfectly. After finishing the system check, he packed his tools and prepared to leave. Laura walked him to the door again, thanking him sincerely for taking the time to help, even when his schedule was busy. Ethan told her it was no trouble at all and reminded her she could always call if something stopped working. As he stepped outside into the late afternoon sunlight, he felt satisfied that the system was running smoothly and that Laura seemed comfortable living in her new home. The visit had been friendly and simple, nothing more than helping family with technology. But inside the house, the smart cameras and sensors continued quietly recording everyday life. Lights turning on, doors opening, someone moving from room to room, capturing small pieces of time that no one paid much attention to. Neither Ethan nor Laura realized that these simple interactions and casual conversations were slowly creating a deeper connection built on comfort and understanding. And although nothing inappropriate had happened and no boundaries had been crossed, the quiet moments they shared were beginning to shape a story that neither of them could fully see yet. For now, everything remained calm and ordinary, but somewhere within the memory of the smart home system, dozens of small recordings were quietly storing fragments of daily life, moments that would later remind them how something so simple had slowly grown into a situation far more complicated than anyone expected. Weeks passed after Ethan Carter finished installing the smart home system in Laura Bennett's house, and at first everything remained simple and calm, but slowly a pattern began to form that neither of them had expected. Laura rarely had serious problems with the system anymore because she had learned how to control the lights, cameras, and temperature through the phone app, yet she still called Ethan from time to time with small questions or updates about the house. Sometimes it was about the voice assistant misunderstanding a command, sometimes about the door camera sending alerts late at night, and sometimes it was simply to confirm that the system was working the way it should. Ethan never minded helping because these conversations were short and easy, but over time they started lasting longer than necessary. After solving the technical issue, Laura would ask how his workday had gone or what kind of homes he had visited recently for installations. Ethan found himself talking more openly than usual, describing his projects and the interesting houses he worked in across Seattle. During one conversation, Laura mentioned how strange it felt living alone in such a large house after years of raising Emily. The quiet evenings sometimes made the rooms feel bigger than they were, and she often kept the living room lights dim with soft music playing just to create a warm atmosphere. Ethan listened carefully because he understood what quiet homes felt like. Even though he lived with Emily, their schedules had become so different that the house often felt empty. Emily usually left before he woke up and returned long after dinner time, exhausted from work. Their relationship was respectful, but distant, and neither of them seemed to know how to fix the growing silence between them. One afternoon, Laura called again with a small problem involving a motion sensor in the hallway that kept turning the lights on during the day. Ethan checked the system remotely and realized the sensor sensitivity was too high, so he adjusted the settings within seconds. Instead of ending the call immediately, Laura asked if he happened to be working nearby that day because she wanted to understand how the sensor worked so she could handle it herself next time. Ethan had just finished an installation in the same neighborhood, so he agreed to stop by quickly. When he arrived, Laura welcomed him inside with a relaxed smile and thanked him again for always being patient with her questions. The house looked peaceful, with sunlight filling the living room and the smart blinds slowly adjusting themselves as the afternoon brightness changed. Ethan showed Laura how the sensor detected movement and how she could adjust its sensitivity through the app. She followed each step carefully, determined to learn the system properly. The demonstration took only a few minutes, but neither of them rushed to end the visit. Instead, they moved into the kitchen, where Laura made coffee, while Ethan checked that the latest software updates had installed correctly. The calm environment made the afternoon feel almost like a break from normal life. Laura asked about Emily and whether work was still keeping her busy. Ethan explained that Emily had recently taken on more responsibilities at the marketing firm, which meant longer hours and more travel for meetings. Laura nodded thoughtfully, but didn't say much, as if she already understood the situation. As they sat at the kitchen table, the smart home system quietly continued doing its job in the background. A camera in the living room activated briefly when sunlight shifted across the floor, recording a short clip of the empty space before shutting off again. Neither Ethan nor Laura noticed it because their attention was focused on conversation. Laura eventually spoke about something deeper, explaining that after years of caring for family, adjusting to a quieter life sometimes felt confusing. She didn't regret the changes, but she occasionally missed the feeling of a full house and long conversations at the dinner table. Ethan listened quietly because the honesty in her voice reminded him how easily life could change when routines disappeared. He admitted that running his own business meant he spent most days alone, driving between houses, installing devices in rooms that belonged to strangers. Laura smiled gently and said that sometimes simple conversations could mean more than people realized. The moment felt thoughtful rather than uncomfortable, and both of them respected the boundary that naturally existed between them. After finishing their coffee, Ethan walked into the living room to double-check the camera system again. The control screen showed dozens of short recordings stored from previous days. Laura reading on the couch, turning lights on in the evening, or walking through the hallway while the sensors adjusted the brightness automatically. Watching the clips reminded Ethan how quietly technology observed everyday life without truly understanding it. Laura stood beside him looking at the screen and commented that it was strange how a house could remember moments people barely noticed. Ethan agreed, explaining that the system was designed for safety, but often captured normal life instead. For a brief second, the monitor showed a reflection of both of them standing near the screen, and the image looked almost like a still photograph of two people sharing a quiet afternoon. Laura noticed it first and took a small step back, smiling politely as if acknowledging the moment without letting it become something more. Ethan returned to checking the settings and confirmed that every device was working perfectly. Soon he packed his tools and prepared to leave. Laura walked him to the door once again, thanking him sincerely not only for the technical help, but also for explaining everything so clearly. Ethan told her she was learning quickly and probably wouldn't need his help much longer. As he stepped outside into the cool afternoon air, he felt satisfied that the system was finally running smoothly and that Laura seemed comfortable in her new home. Yet during the drive back to his workshop, Ethan realized that helping her had become more than just another service job. Their conversations had grown easier and more personal than he expected, though nothing inappropriate had ever happened. It was simply the comfort of understanding someone who listened carefully. Meanwhile, inside the quiet house, the smart cameras and sensors continued recording small, everyday movements, storing simple moments of daily life that seemed ordinary now, but would later remind Ethan how everything had slowly begun. Neither he nor Laura realized that the growing comfort between them, built through casual conversations and peaceful afternoons, was quietly shaping a situation far more complicated than they could see at the time, and soon an unexpected notification from the system would appear that would make Ethan look at everything differently. Late one evening, Ethan Carter sat quietly in his living room after finishing a long workday, scrolling through installation notes on his tablet, while the house remained silent around him because Emily was still at the office finishing a late project. And just as he prepared to close the smart home monitoring app connected to Laura Bennett's system, a notification suddenly appeared on the screen showing a motion alert from Laura's living room camera, something that rarely happened at that hour. And out of simple habit, Ethan opened the alert because he had set the system to notify him if anything unusual appeared during the first few weeks after installation. The short video clip began playing and showed Laura walking slowly into her softly lit living room, wearing comfortable evening clothes, while the smart lights automatically adjusted brightness as the system detected movement, and she sat quietly on the couch for a moment, looking thoughtful, as if she had been thinking about something important. And Ethan almost closed the clip immediately because he knew the cameras were meant for security, not curiosity, but before he exited the recording, Laura's voice could be heard as she spoke on her phone to someone he could not see or hear clearly. Her tone sounded calm yet emotional in a gentle way when she said that life sometimes surprised people with feelings they never expected, and although she never mentioned any names, Ethan felt an uncomfortable curiosity rise in his chest because her words seemed deeply personal. The recording ended quickly after that because the camera only saved short motion clips, leaving Ethan staring at the silent screen wondering if he should have watched the clip at all, and he immediately closed the app, reminding himself that private conversations were not his business, and that the alert had simply appeared automatically. He placed his phone on the table and tried to focus on other work, yet Laura's quiet voice remained in his thoughts throughout the evening, not because she had said anything inappropriate, but because the honesty in her tone revealed emotions that felt deeper than ordinary conversation. The next several days passed normally as Ethan returned to his daily installations across Seattle, while Emily remained busy with work, and although Ethan tried to forget the recording, he occasionally wondered about Laura and whether living alone in the quiet house had made her reflect more deeply about life. Then one evening during dinner, Emily casually mentioned that she had spoken with her mother earlier that day, and that Laura sounded thoughtful lately, saying she had been reflecting on relationships, life choices, and how people sometimes realize important things later than expected. Emily didn't seem worried when she said it, treating the conversation like a normal discussion between mother and daughter, but Ethan felt the same uneasy curiosity return to his mind because the words reminded him of the short clip he had seen earlier that week. A few days later, Ethan received another routine update notification from Laura's smart home system, showing that the software required a small manual reset, something that occasionally happened with new installations, so he called Laura to let her know he might need to stop by for a quick check. She welcomed the visit warmly and told him he could come by any time that afternoon. When Ethan arrived at the house, the atmosphere felt calm as always, with the smart lights glowing softly and quiet, instrumental music playing through the speakers. And Laura greeted him with a relaxed smile while offering coffee, just like during previous visits. Ethan quickly checked the central hub panel in the living room and confirmed that the system update had installed correctly, meaning the visit would be short, yet neither of them seemed in a hurry to rush the moment. While standing near the large window overlooking the quiet neighborhood, Laura suddenly spoke in a thoughtful voice, saying that technology was fascinating because it sometimes showed people things they were not expecting to see. Ethan glanced at the smart control screen on a the wall and nodded carefully, understanding that the system recorded small pieces of life without truly understanding their meaning. Laura continued gently, explaining that sometimes people also discovered emotions they did not plan to feel, especially during quiet chapters of life when they had time to reflect. Ethan listened silently because he understood the deeper message behind her words, yet both of them respected the invisible boundary that existed between them. Laura looked toward the camera mounted near the bookshelf and smiled slightly, as if acknowledging its presence. Then she said that cameras could record movements and sounds, but they could never record the decisions people made inside their hearts. Ethan felt a quiet sense of clarity at that moment because he realized that whatever feelings might have quietly appeared between them were simply human emotions, not something meant to change the course of their lives. He cared about Emily, even though their relationship had grown distant, and Laura cared deeply about her daughter's happiness above everything else. The room remained peaceful as sunlight slowly faded outside, and the smart lights automatically adjusted brightness once again as evening approached. Ethan finished the final system check and confirmed that everything was working perfectly. Then he closed the monitoring screen and packed his tablet. When he walked toward the front door, Laura thanked him sincerely, not just for the technology, but also for being a thoughtful and patient person during the weeks he had helped her understand the house. Ethan responded with a simple smile because sometimes gratitude did not need long explanations. He stepped outside into the cool evening air and walked toward his truck while the quiet neighborhood lights began turning on one by one. And during the drive home, he reflected on how unexpected emotions could appear in ordinary situations. Yet wisdom came from understanding which paths should never be taken. Back inside Laura's house, the smart cameras continued doing exactly what they were designed to do, recording simple moments like lights turning on, doors closing, and peaceful evenings passing. But the most important moment that had just occurred in that living room would never exist in any recording because it was a silent decision shared between two people who understood that some feelings are meant to remain unspoken, respected quietly, and left behind so that the lives around them can continue forward without regret.